The honourable member for Portage Liskeard.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm going to try to watch my time here, and hopefully I'll be on the same timeline as you are. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak today to Bill C-14, which is an act that makes amendments to the Criminal Code and other acts that would, for the first time in Canadian history, make it legal for someone to have medical assistance in taking their own life. It would also make it legal for not just a doctor, nurse practitioner, or somebody involved in the medical community, but an aide, somebody outside of the medical community, to kill someone should they want to be killed if the conditions that are set out in this legislation are met. It's an extremely serious matter that we have before us, and it no doubt will go down as a historic matter and something that will go down in history. I want to take a couple of moments and address a few things, but I want to begin by talking about where and how we got to this place, and building on some of the things that my colleague just talked about. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled, I guess it was just over a year ago, that it was a charter right for Canadians to be able to have assistance in dying, be able to have medical assistance in dying. And they gave us a year, a very, very short time frame to talk about it, to consult, and to come up with legislation. I want to take this opportunity to articulate not only my frustration, but the concern of many of my constituents and many Canadians in what seems to be happening over and over again. Certainly the Supreme Court is within their purview to make these decisions that have huge and lasting implications on Canadian society. Unfortunately, what's happening is Canadians feel, and it is becoming more and more prevalent, that they have no say in these matters. Whether it's issues like assisted death, which is before us right now, or legalized prostitution, which we had to deal with in the last Parliament. We are also seeing laws that have been passed in both this House and the other place that are being overturned by the Supreme Court of Canada. We've seen this in recent years and even recent weeks. I would say, for the record, and I would suggest that it might be time that governments start using the tools that we have at our disposal to bring some more balance back to our process. We have the legislative part of our democracy, we have the executive, which are both accountable to voters, and then we have our judiciary, which is a very valuable part of it, but there's become, what I believe and what my constituents are telling me, an imbalance. And they're feeling like there are 9 people down the street in Ottawa that are making very important decisions, and the Canadian people have no say in it. And the tool that we have as now government, but when Conservatives were in government, is the notwithstanding clause. And I want to, for the record, say that I think we might have to, and I know the government now has 4 years and there's a lot that can happen. For the people of Canada, we might have to look at start using that. Now, we are, though, at a place where the Supreme Court has ruled, and we absolutely respect that. And even though we might disagree with something that a judge or a number of judges say, in Canada, we respect the law and we follow the law. And so, again, you know, my colleague talked about that the Liberals could have asked for more time, and certainly that is something that could have been done. But we are now at a place where we have to look at a law and either pass this law or not. So I will not be able to support this piece of legislation. I believe that it is flawed, and my constituents have not had enough time to talk about it and to be part of the process. A number of the issues that are concerning about the bill have already been articulated. I want to reinforce, I'm very concerned that there's not enough protection for vulnerable persons who may be victims or easily manipulated. I met, and of course with my previous role, I worked a lot with people with disabilities, with a variety of abilities. And I just actually met recently in Winnipeg with an individual who has an intellectual disability, but a very smart, capable individual. But he said to me, Candice, sometimes we can be taken advantage of when we're getting a new phone. It's so easy to manipulate us. He said, I'm worried if somebody is trying to encourage some of us to die, we can be easily manipulated, and there's very little protection in this legislation for vulnerable Canadians. There's also no protection, or very little protection, as already has been stated, for doctors or nurses or other medical practitioners, or institutions for that matter, where killing someone goes against their conscience. The federal government has a duty to protect their rights. This bill could be strengthened by protecting those rights. It's very unclear and ambiguous as far as language around waiting times, around those who can sign for a patient, and there's very little oversight as far as who may have a financial benefit if somebody were to have an assisted death. So a number of huge concerns. More time is needed to fix these flaws and protect the vulnerable and rights of conscience. I want to talk lastly just a little bit about my experience working in palliative care. I was a volunteer for a number of years, and it was something really to behold, to be able to be with people as they were entering those last stages of life. But you know, there's a lot of misconceptions about what assisted suicide is, what assisted death is. I talked to one of my friends this weekend, and she said, well, of course, Candice, if I'm in a vegetative state, I would like to be able to have the cord plugged. I don't want unplugged. I don't want to be kept alive. And I said to her, that's not assisted suicide. That is, you absolutely already have that right in Canada to have a live-in will, to have a do not resuscitate order, to refuse medical treatment. Those are all things that are already entrenched in law and that Canadians have the right to refuse. I think even our Prime Minister talked a number of years ago, but about his own father refusing medical treatment when he had cancer. Absolutely. Every Canadian has that right. But that's not at all what we're talking about today. That is not the decision that is being that we're forced to make in a hasty way. That is not the decision that Canadians are being cheated out of being able to talk about and be able to, even dare I say, vote on. It should be a major issue for Canadians to have major input. We're not talking about refusing treatment. We're not talking about saying do not resuscitate. We're not talking about palliative sedation either. My sister passed away 9 years ago from cancer. Some of my family said, oh, I think she died because the doctor gave her a lot of morphine when she was in pain. No, she did not die from the morphine. She died from the cancer. And palliative sedation is not assisted suicide. You know, I find it ironic in a very sad way. I just finished my 308 conversation in my riding last week. 308 Conversations is an initiative of the Canadian Mental Health Commission, which we created. A wonderful idea for 308, at that point 308 members of Parliament. Now there are 338 of us. Conversations around how do we prevent suicide? How do we better equip ourselves as community leaders, as health practitioners, as people who are working with youth to prevent suicide? So I had these meetings. About 70 people were there, committed to preventing suicide in our communities in Portage Lisgar. And I said, folks, I am now going back to Ottawa, and I'm now going to be debating how we can help people commit suicide. This is a very, very difficult issue, and it is not one that we can just excuse and say, well, in this case, people don't really, we don't want these people to die because they're young people who've been bullied on the internet, so we want to make sure they don't commit suicide. But somebody else who might have a mental illness and just have no hope, we want to be able to help them commit suicide. That's wrong, and I don't think we can easily reconcile the two, and I think we need to talk about it, and we need to have protections in place. Palliative care, very important, and we're up to 9 minutes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's about giving hope to people. Studies show that if people have a terminal illness and they are assured that they can die pain-free, they choose life and they let God decide when they go. So I think we can all agree, absolutely, that it's about helping people, giving them hope, whether it's a mental illness or whether it's a terminal illness, that we give them hope, that we help them alleviate the pain. And I don't think we ever want to see choosing death as the honorable way out. We never want our loved ones to feel like it would be more honorable if they choose death. So I think we can all agree, let's choose life. Every step of the way, let's choose life. Thank you, Madam Speaker.